Hey guys, how are we? Well, I tell you what, it is very hot and balmy here in Pattaya at the moment. The humidity is just something to behold. It's very hard to describe just how hot it is, to be honest. Anyway, we're here for now, so yeah, some really interesting times. So my mother-in-law, so in South Korean or Korean they call them Mother Omar. So she's really not that well, and you know, I'm not sure how much longer we have with her. So I know my wife is over there at the moment spending time with her, and yeah, I'm wishing them all the very best, keeping them in my prayers. And you know, my wife is struggling at this point in time. But anyway, so there's a few people have said, you know, what do you think of Thailand so far? And I've had friends of mine who already live here sort of say to me, hey, what do you think of Thailand, and is it somewhere that you can see yourself living long term? And you know, I genuinely don't know. I'm not that I want to create a boring video of of my life in Thailand, but I suppose it goes back to what were the reasons that I left Australia in the first place. And you know, Australia for me didn't really resonate any longer. And what I mean by resonate were that the values that Australians, not all Australians, but whoever is you know, the ruling class, so the political, media, financial, academic elite, they are so far from my value system that the country no longer resonated with me. You know what I mean? It's they didn't hold my values, didn't hold my opinions and my beliefs. And you know, you can sort of sit there and say, well, you know, it's your country, you've got to fight for it, you've got to fight for your ownership of that particular, you know, history, you know, family history. Like, I've had grandparents and parents, you know, serve in the military and, you know, serve the country, serve the city. I've had, you know, members of the family that were, you know, serving as politicians and government bureaucrats, and, you know, a lot of sacrifice from my family over the generations. And but at what point do you sort of say, hey, you know what, this is a losing battle? Even members of my own family don't hold my values. So at what point do you sort of say, you know, I'm calling it quits. I'm no longer going to cause myself anxiety and frustration and disappointment by continuing this sort of facade of, you know, everything's fine, and, you know, things just don't continue on the way that they are for an extended period of time. You can't go on living that sort of facade. And, you know, I suppose that Australia, as it stands at this point in time, it's a lost cause. And the amount of immigrants that are going into Australia, particularly from places like communist China, I mean, 20 years ago that would have been completely unheard of. And I'm not trying to single out any particular people group, because I know, I've got friends that are Chinese, and, you know, my wife is Korean, so I certainly don't hold those sort of values. But there is that much going on behind the scenes in Australia. It is an utterly lost cause, and I don't want to get into too much of that on this video, but it's one of those things where you have to cut your losses for your own sake and just say, you know what, I have to look further afield in green pastures for my future. You know, we went to Europe and had ideas that we might be able to do business over there and sort of carve out a future for ourselves in Europe. And, you know, COVID happened, and, you know, certainly different things have happened to change that situation. And you have to be agile. I mean, there's just no, you know, nothing set in concrete. So you have to be agile and sort of say, okay, so where else do we go? And it's amazing how many of my friends had already made the decision to migrate to Thailand and you know, carve out a little niche for themselves over here and make a life in an unknown sort of culture and country. Is that for me? I'm not sure. I know my wife isn't really 100% happy with it because, you know, the son is back in Australia and she has, you know, family and friends in Korea, and you know, it's certainly not I think where she wants to be long term. So, but in saying that, you know, I don't know. My wife absolutely loves Australia, but she can't see what Australia was compared to what it is now. So there is a disconnect between the history of Australia and what I grew up in and what Australia stands for now. Australia is now very liberal, very progressive, seems to hold this narrative that it stands for nothing. And they're almost ashamed of the past that they, you know, were involved in. That's what created Australia. That's what created the affluent, successful culture that is Australia. And for some reason, they're absolutely ashamed of it now. So, you know, that just disappoints me really no end. As I said, doesn't really resonate with me. And I had to really look further afield at the rest of the world to find out, okay, what really resonates with me? Where does my future belong? And, you know, not that I really wanted to start a channel called The Overseas Exile, but I have really been exiled in a lot of ways because there's nothing for me to go back to in Australia. As much as I might have to go back to Australia in the near future, there's nothing there for me. Apart from, you know, family and friends, but, you know, family and friends can visit us here in Thailand or in, you know, Mexico, wherever we decide to go, you know. So, I don't know, there's just that absolute disconnect. And I don't know if you feel the same way about Australia or the US or the UK, that it's some sort of civilization that no longer holds your values. But there's certainly a lot of reasons there to discontinue the connection with that particular society and look for your future in other civilizations and other regions of the world. And as I said, it doesn't mean that you find this sort of oasis that, you know, meets all of your needs and, you know, this is absolute perfection. Because let me tell you, Thailand is certainly not that. Thailand has a lot of shortcomings. One of the things that frustrates me is a lot of people here don't speak English. There's a lot of foreigners here that even don't speak English. And the infrastructure here is really subpar compared to a lot of places, for example, in Australia or the developed parts of the world. The other thing that frustrates me about Thailand is they seem to see Westerners as an ATM. And I know that sounds cliched, but they seem to look at Westerners as an opportunity to milk them for money. And I absolutely hate that about Thailand. Look, at the end of the day, there's a lot of Thai people who are really, really lovely. absolutely genuine and friendly. But there's another side to Thai culture that I think they sort of look at foreigners as a bit of a, an opportunity to get funds, to get stuff that they don't have any capacity to get. And, that kind of saddens me in one aspect, but I think that really too, that depends on where you're going. I know where we sort of spend a lot of time, and we don't really go out all that often. I think if you went into central Pattaya and you were into the bar scene, you would be absolutely milked for everything that you're worth. But we sort of spend a lot more time with genuine people, and people who are, genuine business people and well established and that sort of stuff, and they sort of see you as, some people are always going to see you as an opportunity, particularly if you have some currency in regards to social media and YouTube, Facebook, etc. They're going to want to get alongside you to try and build their own influence, which I find sad, but anyway, that's just the facts of the matter. But I constantly have to go through offers on collaborating with people because I value my viewers, I value my social media followers. I really value our community, and I am really hyper vigilant, I suppose, in regards to trying to shelter that community from products and services and opportunities that I think are pretty much subpar and not going to be of great value to them in the long run. So, I really value our community, and I really value what we have online. So, it just is what it is. So that's the way that I look at things. So what's over here in Thailand, I genuinely don't know. I may have to go back to Australia at the end of the month, purely because I may not be able to renew my visa here. And, it is what it is. I would like to possibly head off to South Korea and spend some time with my wife, but I'm a little bit anxious because I know that it's a pretty stressful time for the family over there. And trust me, South Korea does not have a lot of space, and I certainly don't want to impinge on the extended family, so to speak, in a difficult time. So anyway, so there's challenges that I face in the near term, so that's just being completely honest with you. But do love Thailand. It's one of the best places I've visited in the world outside of Australia. In regards to infrastructure, Australia is absolutely probably second to none. But in regards to way of life and some of their political and social values, I would count them as some of the strangest sort of value systems I have ever come across. So certainly doesn't resonate with me. So anyway, is what it is. Alright guys, going to leave that there. Thanks for watching. If you haven't liked and subscribed to the channel, do me a favour, hit the subscribe button, and we'll go from there.